meeting, annual budget. Okay. You on? Where are we on? Okay, so we'll call it to order. And I think we kind of have a tradition doing this. I'd like to welcome you. I want to thank you for coming and putting in another evening. I know many of you may work and do all sorts of things and have another evening to put out, but really appreciate you coming. I'd like to go around and I'll just start to my left and work our way around, or I'll start and go this way. Just introduce yourself, your name, any family connections, any connections to Phoenix talent. Is that working? And we'll go from there. I'm Dwayne Robinson. I've been in the district since 1992. My wife worked in the district in special ed for a few years, and my kids, all three of them, went through the school district and loved the school district. And so it's time to kind of give back for all the school district's done for us. So that's our goal.
I'm Dawn Watson, and I am on the school board. I've been on for 8 years. I have 2 children, one who graduated last year and one that is graduating this year.
I'm Laura Lotspeech. I was a school board member for 16 years. Both of my boys graduated from Phoenix High School. Been on the budget committee now, I think, for 22 years, including the school board years. Love to see everybody participating again, and looking forward to this incredibly complicated budget process going smoothly.
Good evening, Michael Campbell. I have my oldest is starting kindergarten at Orchard Hill this year, so we're really excited about that. And this is my 3rd school year on the Phoenix Talent Board. Thank you for being here this evening. Really appreciate it.
There you go.
Good evening, I'm Yasmin Carabinas. I'm the Director of Accounting. And unfortunately, I don't live in the district boundaries, but I've been working for the district for 11 years. And my daughter went to the two-way immersion program at Phoenix Elementary School, so great program. And
Thank you. My name is Brent Berry, Superintendent, Phoenix Talent Schools. This is my 18th year in the district, my 5th year as superintendent. It is really nice to be in person for this budget committee meeting. It's great to see you smiling faces, and look forward to sharing tonight. Thanks.
Elementary.
Buenas noches, good evening. Oh, is mine not working? Oh, yes. Ready to sing. Nancy McKennis, and I have 2 kids that graduated and one that's still in the district. And I'm really happy to be here. Nice to meet you, or see you again, I should say.
My name is Roland Kretschmann. My daughter went through the entire school district, and I've been on the budget committee and the bond committee for a bunch of years.
I'm Elle Powell, and I have a daughter at Orchard Hill and another one at Talent Middle. This is my very first meeting. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Crawford. I have 3 students who graduated from the district, and I serve on the school board since 2016. So I think that's 5, 6-ish years, somewhere in there.
Mark Vargas. I have 3 kids. They all went K-12 here. They're all pretty much done with college, and some are pursuing other things. I've been on the Phoenix Talent school board's budget committee. I think 1998 was my first year. So it's been fun being here, part of the crew, and neat to see some very familiar faces with the staff and some new faces, and things change. So glad to be here.
Dwayne, do you want to have staff take the
Yeah, I
mic
was gonna
around?
say,
and-
staff,
yeah.
if you wouldn't mind just saying hello and
Okay.
introducing yourselves.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you, board. Good to see you, committee. Familiar faces. I'm Toby Walker, principal at Phoenix High School. This is my 15th. I'm glad to see your faces tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Shank. I am the current principal at Orchard Hill Elementary School, and this is my 18th year in the district also. So welcome.
Thanks, Kurt. Good evening. My name is Tiffany Lambert. I'm Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and this is my 5th year in the district.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Hamlin, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. This is my 1st year in the district, and I'm very happy to be here and learn from this process.
Good evening. My name is Shauna Schleif, principal at Phoenix Elementary School, and this is my 17th year in the district.
Good evening. Thanks for your time here tonight, everyone. My name is Kent Valera. I'm the principal at Talent Middle School. It's my 4th year here at Phoenix Talent.
This is Heather Lowe from Talent Elementary. I'm the principal over there in year 16.
Hello, Aaron Santi, principal at Phoenix Talent Rising Academy, and this is my 17th year in the district.
And Sarah Adams.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm homesick on the couch. I'm sorry to miss you all. I have a 5th grader at Orchard Hill and an 8th grader. Principal Shank, please don't look up our attendance. It's been atrocious. My 5th grader has senioritis. And I've been on the bond committee, I think, or the budget committee. I think this is my 3rd year, and I was on the bond committee before as well.
Javier, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, there he is.
I didn't know I was supposed to say anything. Well, okay. I am participating as a member of the community and a real deep supporter of the Phoenix Talent School District. And I just wanted to hear what the budget is about. And I just love the fact that you guys are so thorough with the taxpayers' money. So thank you for all your work. And I'm just happy to be here listening to the great work that has taken place.
Okay. Is that everyone? I don't want to leave anybody out. That's it? Okay. Can you hear me okay out here? Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to approval of the minutes. And I appreciate these being handed out this week. Thank you for doing that, staff, and appreciate that. Hope you had a chance to read through it, look through it. Does anyone have any additions, subtractions, corrections that you need to you've made a note of? Okay. Have a second, Mr. Vargas, Mark. So Laura offered to the motion to accept the minutes as presented, and Mark seconded that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Okay, we did that. The next piece is the election of officers for our 22-23 budget committee. So the first thing we need to do is to nominate someone to the chair position, and then we'll also, in a separate motion, nominate and vote on someone for vice chair. So we'll start with the chair. Do we have any nominations from the floor?
I nominate Dwayne Robinson as chair for the 2022-23
Okay.
budget committee.
Second.
Second. Any others would like to make a offer a nomination? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on that. To accept Dwayne Robinson as the chair of our budget committee for the fall for this next year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And abstain, that would be me. Motion passed. Would someone like to nominate a vice chair from the floor?
I nominate Mark Vargas because he's sitting right next to you. It works out well.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Laura seconds that motion. Mark, would you be okay with that?
Yes,
I
I
guess
would,
I better
thanks.
ask you. Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, then we're going to vote to nominate Mark as our vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Oops, that's not me.
I'll abstain.
And one abstention. Okay, motion passed. Okay, thank you. Let's move ahead. I'm going to turn this over to Brent to present our budget message.
Thank you, Chair Robinson and members of the Budget Committee. This day is here, finally. I think it's been a lot of work. Yasmin Carabinas and her team have done an amazing job. We're going to go through a budget message that I've prepared, and then I will turn it over to Yasmin and she'll go through the budget document, and then we'd be happy to entertain any questions. Thank you so much. It's evident that you've been going through the documents. We've had questions already, which is fantastic. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to have some questions later on as well that we can answer. So thank you for your diligence and your commitment to ensuring we have a document that provides for our kids in our community. So thank you for that. We've been through a lot in the last couple of years, as you know, in our community. These pictures represent, it's all right. Yeah, that's right, Ron. No, it's not the. It's all right. Should be there it is. Can we give Chris a round of applause, by the way? He's been navigating through online meetings all year. He's new to us this year as a media arts teacher, and just thankful for his expertise and how he helps us really expand and communicate with our community. So, budget message. Where'd that go now? It was there. Yep. as he gets that up, there's really no rocket science on that budget message to start. What you will see when we get that up is just our budget committee members, and it makes up of 7 community members and 7 board members. And thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for taking part in this budget message. We also discuss in this the budget committee responsibilities. And so what you will do tonight is you will receive the budget message and the budget documents that we are going to go through. Request additional information if needed. And there's a lot of numbers there. There's a lot of information there. And this is probably one of the most detailed and largest budget that we've ever passed or that we've ever presented to a budget committee in our district's history. You can recommend to administration to make increases or decreases in the proposed budget. And finally, you'll recommend approval for the budget and as submitted by the budget officer. And that really completes your responsibility as a budget committee member. Where it goes next is to the board. The board's responsibilities are scheduling a public hearing, which we will do prior to a board meeting in June. Take action on the proposed budget and adopt and then levy taxes as well. Approving supplemental budgets if it's necessary throughout the year. We've had to do that a couple times, not recently, but there are times where some unexpected things come up in a year and we'll have to present it to the board to adopt a supplemental budget. That doesn't come back to the budget committee, so. Thank you, Chris. And that's board's responsibilities. And then this is where we are, budget timeline, May 10th. Then we have it scheduled for June 2nd, the public hearing. And then the board will act on the budget. There was a time a couple years ago where we had an extension on creating budgets, especially when we were beginning a biennium. That's not the case this year because we are in the second year. We're going into the second year of the biennium. So we have a funding number that is a lot more secure than it typically is when we're doing budgeting at the beginning of the biennium. Last year, we thought this budget process was complicated, a challenge, and we have received a lot of federal and state grants, and you'll see that in this budget, and it just makes it that much more, I'll say fun, because it is fun to have money and resources to spend on our kids in our community, but it takes a lot of work to prepare that. The level of detail and coordination is greater than really any budget we've ever put together in this district. Focus was providing, and this is super important, providing students currently in our schools and continue to make improvements on some initiatives that we have in our district, strategic planning and some other big initiatives. We also want to make sure it's very clear tonight that we have a responsibility to make sure that we are prepared for the future. We have grants and funding that has an end date. We were very fortunate, and you'll hear later on, very fortunate to have some cooperation from the Oregon State Legislature to help with some ADM funding for the next several years, but that does have an end date. So it's very important that we share and communicate that we need to make sure we're prepared. And this budget committee, this board, this school district is in good shape in the future. And this budget, we believe, represents that. So what's in this budget? If we went a little, there we go. Thank you. It's all right. This is some exciting stuff. This is, some highlights, and Yasmin will go through some as well. But what you'll see in this budget, what you read, what you have skimmed through, however you reviewed this budget, it really intentionally leverages all our funds. And I think we've done a very good job of that. If you've been around all the bond planning and the bond work, we've leveraged our funds in that regard with state grants, with incentives. And that's what we're doing currently in our whole district budget, leveraging our federal funds, our state fund, and all the other specific grants to make sure we're providing for our kids. And that's not easy. That takes a group effort of everybody you're seeing here and those working in the schools to make sure we're maximizing and being efficient with our funding. We're increasing our school counseling at Phoenix High School. And this is through a Measure 98. It's actually High School Success Fund now. When you see M98, it was a measure that was passed about 5 years ago, specifically for high school success. The legislature has now changed the name of that funding to High School Success, which has to do with CTE, career technical education, dropout prevention, and some enrichment for our students. So with that, we have increased our career counseling and counseling services at the high school. We do have PTS Rising, which is kind of our call sign, I guess, since the fires, and we're continuing to rise from the ashes. We have a K12 music program that we are really, really proud of. It's not complete yet, building it out. And I know we'll have some questions later on that, but we will have elementary music teachers for the first time in years in this district. And that's going to set us up very well for the performing arts in the future. That is funded. GF, when you see that, is general fund, and SIA is student investment account, which is another state grant that we can leverage our funds with. We have a budget for elementary music or for music education for elementary and secondary. This has to do with instruments. We've not had band instruments purchased in many years, and they are old. And sometimes it costs just as much money to get them refurbished and get them working and tuned up as they do to purchase new ones. So that was an increase that we're really excited about, setting ourselves up for the future as far as musical instruments. We did add additional professional development day. We've heard from our staff, it's been a really tough time in education. And with all the expectations, all the, the trauma we specifically faced in this district, and really navigating through a pandemic, challenging time for teachers. So we added through some federal funding, some professional development days. It does not impact student contact days, so it's not taking away from student contact days to add professional in-service days for teachers. It's just adding additional time for our staff to collaborate. We do have a contingency fund of $800,000. Again, we've been dedicated to that the last several years. Also in this budget is, you may know that it's very, very challenging to get substitute teachers these days. And so we, through federal funding, want to make sure that our classes and support for our kids remains consistent. And so in this budget, we have 7 long-term certified subs to cover classes for unexpected absences or absences where we cannot fill them through our service through the ESD. We've had that this year, and it's just saved us in a number of ways. So we'll continue that for another year, and then we'll see where we are with our substitute pool as the years go on. We did get a large grant from the state of Oregon for community care. It's a pilot program that we're going to build as we go, essentially. And so we hired a director of equity and community care, where most of that, those monies will come from the grant and some from ESSER 3, which is the final federal dollars that we'll be spending out over the next couple of years. For the first time, we've have a line item for our equity and diversity and inclusion work of $40,000. That's included in here. We haven't had dedicated funds to really professional develop or support travel or dedicated funds for that work, so that we're excited to add that into this budget. We believe we have fair and competitive compensation packages for all of our employee groups. We're working through that now. We have our licensed staff are the only ones to finish up this spring, and we're confident that we'll get there. That's going to be fair and competitive. We have increased our teacher on special assignment for our migrant ed in Title III. That's out of our teaching and learning department at the district office. When we several years ago, we had 2 teachers on special assignment, and we are down to a 0.5 FTE. The work didn't go away, the needs didn't go away. It would just put a lot more on other staff members. So we are now increasing that to a full-time person. And then we have, if you build it, they will come. And we have a tremendous special education program in our district. It's talked about widely in our valley and across the state. And we have families moving into our district to get those services. And sometimes, you know, some of our kids need a little extra support. So we have additional one-on-one support in the general fund to accommodate for some of those new families. So those are just some highlights. It's exciting to share some of those. It's just a piece of what we have in this budget, but I wanted to call out some of the exciting things that are that we have moving forward. And as I close, the board, and we read this at every budget meeting, and this is still a guiding principle that our board reviews every year. And so it says, the board shall encourage the conservative use of all resources, both natural and man-made. Strategic decisions should be made with consideration of longevity, fiscal responsibility, and sustainability. And I wrote on here, this guiding principle is never more true than it is today, tonight. We have a responsibility to not only provide for our students, staff, and families next year, but also be in a position to make sure we can sustain and continue to offer rich programs for many years to come. So with that, I'm excited to introduce Yasmin, who is making her budget document presentation debut as well. Not necessarily budget document, because she knows this thing better than anybody in our whole district over the last several years. So really appreciate her work, how thorough she is, and just her commitment to this district and our kids. So with that, Yasmin, you're on.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna review the budget document. So I have some of the slides that Javier created last year, and I thought they were so pretty, so I left them, like this one. So is the second one. Let me see, sorry. Okay, so the budget binder is divided in 22 tabs. The first tab is the budget message. In tabs 2 through 18, the general fund. Tab 2 is a summary. It has some graphs if you've seen the document. Tab 3 is the revenue sources for general fund. Tabs 4 through 18 has the expenditures detail. And then we have tabs for other funds, like 19 has the grants and special programs. Tab 20 has the debt service. 21 is the capital projects fund or the bond fund. And tab 22 has the grand totals for resources and requirements, which if you look at it is the same amount because they must balance. The total budget for the proposed budget for 22-23 is 73,570,000. We have 4 main funds to manage the district's resources. The general fund, which is the operating fund of the district. The debt service fund is used to hold tax levy by the district to pay for the bond debt. The Special Revenue Fund holds grants and other restricted funds of the district. And last, the Capital Projects Fund is restricted for construction projects funded from bond proceeds. You got it. Okay, so tab 3 has the general fund revenue resources. We are estimating property tax revenues of 10 million for 22-23 and state sources of close to 22 million. The ADMW, which is the weighted average daily membership, is the number of enrolled students in the district after a formula is applied to help with services for students that may need additional support. For example, students who qualify for special education services and second language learners. The state school fund is allocated to school districts according to the current year or prior year ADMW, whichever is higher. With the passing of House Bill 4026, we were able to budget the state school fund at the ADMW level of school year 1920, which is higher than last year by about 300 and around 480 higher than the current ADMW. ADM Security will provide an additional $4.5 million in state school funding for our district. We are estimating a beginning fund balance of 9.7 million. The general fund balance has grown over the past 2 years due to savings during the pandemic on transportation, substitutes, and supplies, and being able to apply additional sources of funding that, besides helping with a safe school reopening, they have allowed us to provide additional support to our students and staff and incorporate some facility improvements with health and safety in mind. The decrease of enrollment statewide also increased the state school fund monies distributed to school districts. So here's just a few highlights for the general fund. State school fund was funded at 9.3 billion for the biennium, and because it's the second year of the biennium, it's funded at 51%. House Bill 4026 ADM Security will provide about 4.5 million in state school fund revenue. TLC school budgets moved from the Special Program Center to school centers to comply with ESSA federal guidance. So you will see in some of the schools, the budget is much higher, including the FDE, and it's because of the TLC program moving to their school centers. The only one that didn't move this year is the RISE program at Phoenix Elementary School, because we still have some students that are not all elementary school level. So, but we're hoping that by next year, we'll be able to move it to the proper center. The general fund increased overall 5.4 FTEs. The general fund expenditures by function. So for general fund expenditures and all expenditures for the budget, the expenditures are broken down by function, object, center, and areas of responsibility. Functions classified expenses according to their purpose. So we have instruction, support services, facilities acquisition and construction, debt service for pension bonds, and reserves for next year. The object describes the type of expense. As you can see on the graph, the main expenses for the school district are salaries and associated payroll costs, which, excluding reserves for next year and contingency, represent about 73% of expenses. Then we have other type of expenses like purchase services, which will include transportation, substitutes supplied by the ESD, and utilities. Also, we have supplies and materials for instruction, maintenance, information technology, etc., and capital purchases. Other objects include insurance, dues and fees, and pension bonds debt. Cost centers. Cost centers are used to identify schools and other central cost centers or programs. Cost centers are determined by the school district, but are required by the state for reporting purposes because expenditures must be reported at school level rather than district level. This year, we have added a new cost center to the budget for the Phoenix Talent Rising Academy, which is in tab 11 of the budget document. We have budgeted for transportation expenses, hoping to have all routes running next year. The graphs are a little strange. Okay. So we have an example for Phoenix High School. Our schools can be found in tab 5 through 11. This slide is an example of how to read the details of this budget for the general fund. The whole budget document follows the same pattern. The budget document must include certain columns. We are required to present the 2 preceding years' actuals, the current year budget and FTE, and the proposed budget amount and FTE. Once the budget is approved and adopted, 3 more columns will be added to the budget document. As PHS illustrates on the example, if you please go to tab 5, page 16, you will see the budget for the high school science department. Small changes on FTE indicate different funding sources or transfers of FTEs to other departments such as auto shop. Now, if you go to tab 5, page 46, you will see the total general fund budget for Phoenix High School. The increase on FTE and funding is due to increases in hours to some positions, the full-time inclusion of FTE of some teachers that were partially paid with High School Success Act funds before, and the addition of a one-on-one special education instructional assistant. The transfer of the TLC program funding from the Special Programs Center on tab 12 to the school's budgets to comply with SR requirements has also increased the FTE and total budgets of the schools. Okay, now we're done with general fund. We're going to grants and special programs, which is on tab 19. The total budget for the grants and special programs fund is 22.345 million. The title grants budget is 1.7 million and ESSER grants close to 6 million. SIA for 22-23 is about 2.6 million. And High School Success Act is 830,000. Other sources include smaller grants, for example, SOU AP classes, Carpenter Foundation, Career Pathways, SB 1149 Energy Program, and other miscellaneous grants. It also includes state summer programs, the Migrant Education Grant, student body accounts, and the Fletcher Fish Scholarship Fund. So we just have a few highlights for the grants and special programs. Besides the new positions that Brent already mentioned, there is also a new campus. The next one. Okay, there you go. There is also a new campus engagement specialist position and a 0.33 FTE for a TMS graduation coach funded with a Measure 98 grant. For SIA, we have a full-time school psychologist and a 7-hour band assistant position. The IDA American Recovery Plan or ARP grant will fund a district-wide speech language pathologist for 22-23. And for SR3, a full-time intervention specialist position at Phoenix High School. All of these programs are making a huge difference for our students. Even though the Elmira fire and the pandemic have set us back, The graduation rate increase, for example, is an indication of the impact of the High School Success Act grant is having on our students. The addition of the music program and the full-time psychologists with SIA funds have a great impact on the well-being and mental health of our students as well. Thank you. The new school-based community coordinator grant awarded to the district will provide 3 full-time coordinators, and it will also provide half funding for the new director of equity and community care position. This grant is about $487,000 for 22-23. Then we have another new grant, which is the retention and recruitment grant. It's about $300,000. This grant was awarded by the state to school districts to aid with staff shortages throughout the state. We have the House Bill 4026 ADM security, which will also provide an additional $290,000 for SIA and $104,000 for Measure 98. The House Bill 5006 provided grants to counties for lost tax revenue due to the 2020 wildfires. Our district was the most affected in Southern Oregon, and the full allocation of $4.3 million was received in the current year. The House bill didn't address a specific length of time, so the district can use these funds as needed for years to come to backfill for shortages on the general fund and the debt service fund due to tax losses. Now the debt service fund, it's on tab 20. For this fund, it's a smaller fund. It holds only the debt service that we have for the new bond. Is $3,526,000, the total debt, and out of that, principal is about $2.2 million or 2.3, and interest is about $1.2 million. Even though we had low property tax levies estimates for 2021 due to the Almeda fire, the debt service rate for the new bond was 1.468 per thousand, which is lower than the 1.49 estimated rate. Thank you, Brent. Okay, now the capital projects fund is our last fund on tab 21. This is just an overview of all the monies that have been spent on the bond from the inception on 17-18 all the way through once it passed on November of 2017 and the bonds were issued on March of 2018. As you can see, most of the monies were spent and we have an ending fund balance projected for this year of $4.77 million. So that's pretty much all gone, almost. And so the full amount was appropriated in case we incur engineering and other costs during the 22-23 year for the Talent Middle School and Talent Elementary School seismic projects. Okay. Now the graphs are a little bit too blown up, but this one mainly shows the expenditures according to the project for each one of the different years. As you can see, if you're able to see the orange color, of course, is the expenditures for Phoenix High School, which is the largest one. And the yellow one was the elementary and the Phoenix Elementary School energy project. And that's it for the review for the budget. Do you have any questions?
Yes, please. On the SIA grant, what's the renewal on that? Is that an annual renewal? So we have to apply annually to continue the programs that are started with that money? Do we anticipate a success on that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. SIA grant is continuous funding from the state of Oregon based on our ADM. And there's a process that we have to go through each year to get community input. And present to the board as well. We have seen some tremendous impact already with additional support at our elementary schools and our middle school for that, but that is based on ADM. What I really appreciate about the legislature move is not only did they secure monies for our state school fund, they also added in Measure 98 or high school success and SIA, because we have personnel in those that could have been a dramatic hit. So when the legislature did not pass this last year when we thought they were going to, it actually benefited us because SIA and high school success was not in that bill last year. That got in this year. So that was frustrating, but it also ensured that we have extra support from those grants. So, but that is based on ADM and it will continue. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you, Brett. So the K12 Music Program is funded through that as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have, we're leveraging a few different funds on that, but yeah, for our elementary music, one of them's funded through that.
How about vocal music? Like at the high school, I see there's a 0 number there. Is that part of the shifting dynamic internally in the bookkeeping?
Yeah, it's and that hurts to say it's 0 there. As you know, when we were 800 students, we had a robust performing musical arts program. We're down to about 640 students, but also we had to make some tough decisions on elementary music back in 2010 or so, and that was eliminated. So we anticipate that will be building again as far as vocals in both middle school and high school as we do that. And some of the principals may want to share a little bit, but we had Mike DeRose, who was a full-time band teacher at the high school, who was, through budget cuts and participation, ended up being a band teacher at the middle school and the high school. But we were able to support a middle school band teacher this past year, which really increased that program. Mike's time then went down to 5th grade band, and he's actually a little bummed. He will do that next year, but he won't be able to do it the following year because his high school program will be fully, he'll have a full staff of courses. So we're hopeful that that will continue also with vocals as we have elementary music students work with our teachers and go through the secondary schools.
And theater is funded at 0.
Yes, so that's another one that some of these programs are personality driven, and when you lose a kind of a dynamic vocal teacher or theater teacher, sometimes that takes some hits on the program. And so I am pleased to share that we do have a theater club that's been going this spring, and I'm hopeful that we will have some classes here soon for theater as that program begins to build with that, because I think we have the right person to recruit and put on performances. So
we actually see 0 on talent middle for engineering and extracurricular as well.
Say again.
There's zeros across the board on extracurricular activities and engineering classes. I think I'm looking at page 63.
Page
talent middle.
63.
6.
Yeah, and I
was
think we
just
can.
piggybacking what you were saying about there's $0 for music, theater, vocal, music, and as well as engineering and extracurricular. I was just going to different schools.
Yeah, we used to have a school of innovation and design, which had some engineering funding to it. We do not have that program there anymore. That again was a staffing in that program moved into different kind of areas. As far as the school, we did add music band back in that regard. As far as extracurriculars, our middle school does have extracurricular. So I don't know if you can speak to why that specific one has
Yes, I
0.
was trying to find the actual line item that Ellie was talking about. But so yeah, the SDI, what was it called?
School of Innovation and
the
Design,
School of Innovation. We don't have it at the Talent Middle School anymore, so that's why the budget went to other areas. And as far as the music, there's very little budget there because the teacher is being paid through the SIA grant at this time. And that's the reason why you don't see much money in that area.
Yasmin, I understand that it's complicated when, like you were saying earlier, teachers are funded in different places, so it doesn't show up necessarily on the line item for that particular school, like music. It's under the SIA grant, but it doesn't, they're there, but they don't show up on that line item. in that tab.
Exactly. And in some cases, we pay the salaries through the grant, and then we just put a little bit of money for supplies that they need in the general fund. That's why sometimes you see some zeros.
The positive that I saw was doubling the FTE on the auto shop program. Is that a interest-driven increase, or did we get some funding specifically for that?
Basically, there was a reclassification. Brad Jones used to be part science teacher, and after I talked to Toby, I realized he was just an auto shop. So we had to first off transfer part of his FTE from the Measure 98 from the previous year. And then, so the full FTE went into auto shop. That's the reason why you see that increase. And if you go into the science department, you'll see that there's a decrease.
The other thing that I found interesting was a decrease in the summer food services was pretty dramatic funding. Is that in a different location as well?
So what happened with the summer food program is that for the whole year of the pandemic, the federal government decided to give us an extension or a waiver so we could apply the state school fund, the summer program, because there's less requirements and you don't have to keep track of so many different requirements for the kids to be able to feed them, and you're able to feed the community as well. So they went ahead and extended it for the whole year. That's why you see a huge money increase for last year, like 900 something thousand. And then you probably won't see any money on the lunch program or the breakfast program because we didn't utilize those at all. We are expecting that next year we're gonna go back to the norm, which will be the NSLP. I think that's what it says on the line item, which is the lunch program, and then the breakfast program as well. And the summer will be just for the summer program, June, July, and August.
Yasmin, I think Sarah Adams has a question.
Oh, sorry, I put it in the chat. I was wondering if there were any plans to start up SDI again at some point in the future.
Yeah, we that was a popular program, and we are discussing a lot of different programs and how we offer that. As far as SDI specifically, I think that's something that we can continue to, if we can find the right personnel and the right expertise in that, it'd be nice to really look at offerings. We actually, when we had some change in FTE there, we discussed on how we expand that hands-on learning and project-based learning to all of our students, all 500 students at the middle school. And so that's something that we're also discussing as well, providing those opportunities.
And Brent, could you remind us what SDI?
Yeah, School of Design and Innovation. It was a kind of a magnet program at the middle school that we created back in 2016 because it was a desire of some families to have some specialized program in engineering, and it was pretty successful for many years.
I think you mentioned the expenditure for new musical instruments. Is that the $81,000 that we're seeing? I think it's wonderful. It was startling when I saw it, but I understand how much those instruments cost as well. So I'm encouraged to see that expenditure going that direction.
Thank you. And we're in a good time to do that too. I mean, you guys have been through some tight budget stuff. And so it really will set us up. I think Mr. DeRost and his team that really are forward thinkers and understand our kids and really set us up for the future. So it's long overdue. Thanks.
Am I correct to assume that this does not include a marijuana or state lottery? The state lottery funds or the marijuana tax? Because this, it says that the state lottery that comes out in later this month, and then the marijuana comes out in October. So what do you do with those funds if they're not yet in the budget?
Well, those funds are utilized to fund school districts, but we don't really get to see the separation. They just fund the state school fund, which is the distribution to districts. So that's managed at the state level.
So essentially it still goes in the pot. That is, there's dedicated percentages for those taxes to go to education, but it just goes to the state and it just comes to us in the state school fund formula.
Okay, so that would be like, let's say the marijuana one, that would probably roll into your next school year, most likely, since it's so late.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how that actually comes in as far as some come in October and some I think are coming up soon too. So whenever they do those revenue forecasts, they also do statewide revenue forecasts. And that will be included in the whole state. That'll come out. We will have another one, I think, pretty soon, which will include lottery, marijuana tax, revenues from tax collection, from personal income tax as well. So,
okay, thank you.
As far as when that will be in the state school fund, I'd have to check on that timing. So,
okay.
Brett, when those come out so late, does that help you in the next year planning? You kind of know, well, this is really the percentage we got for last year. There's no way to know ahead of time. Factor that in, or do you want to hit your previous from the previous income that came in?
So it's mainly at the state level. We are really just dependent on whatever they approve for the state school fund at the end of the day. So, but the more revenue comes in, of course, the more revenue is that we receive as school districts.
I will tell you something that I'm trying to wrap my brain around is Yasmin will come to me and say, we had more revenue in ADM from 1920 school year. And I'm thinking to myself, what? That was a couple years ago, but they once they start doing all those books, it'll come in. They may have adjusted the formula for that year a little bit, and it could mean, $100,000 difference. And so those things just kind of add up. It's really interesting how they do that. And so
yeah.
Yes.
What happened is that on every May, they do a reconciliation from the prior fiscal year. So once they run all their numbers and they're able to get everybody's local revenue, everybody's ADMs, they compare it against what they actually projected for the state. And usually that's through those reconciliations that we actually get extra monies. Sometimes we don't even know how much it's gonna be. Sometimes it's a surprise, like, oh, I was expecting 50,000 and I get 300,000, which is good, right? But that's what happens. So once they reconcile their own books, then they pass it on to us.
Does it ever decrease? Like you're like, oh, this is a shortage.
I haven't seen it happening in the past few years. I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years ago when they were having budget problems, maybe that happened. But, since I've been doing this for 11 years and I haven't seen it happening.
They don't promise anything, so you're always surprised. Many years ago, when in the middle of the biennium, they came to us and cut our budget by 50%. And we sat around the table, weeping tears about programs that we're going to have to shortchange and doubling class sizes, et cetera. But Yasmin's right that we never know. And sometimes it's a little trickle and sometimes it's, wow, this is a windfall. What can we do with this? Save it for the next time there's a shortfall is what we do.
So I got just a quick question for clarification. The 3 FTEs of certified school-based community coordinators, what are those people?
That's a great question. So we are one of 4 districts that were approached by the state to participate in a grant-funded program that's not competitive. It's we just get, I think, $400,000 was the number this year. And what it's meant to do is really have school site people at our elementary schools to help families navigate not only just the school environment, but also resources outside the school environment, whether it be other services like healthcare, mental health, things of that nature. There'll be a lot of training provided by Oregon Department of Education. And what they're hoping for is at the end of this 2 years that we have a model that we can say to the legislature or representatives that, you know, this process works. We have a system where our families can have access care. If you ask anybody in nonprofits and schools, that's something that we've been really wanted clarity on for many years, because we have families that are in crisis for one reason or the other. And sometimes we have one shot to help that family and point them in the right direction. And if our staff are not clear, if our community does not have systems of care set up, then it does not help that family in a timely manner. And so that's a dedicated fund that will help build that model. So it's not a model that's created right now.
So they'll be placed in individual schools themselves?
Yeah.
High school, middle school, and
This
one of
grant
elementaries?
is just for elementary. We were asking if we can spread that out into middle and high school, and ODE is, they're flexible in that regard. They did apply for another grant that they will find out in September to go for the secondary schools. So if that happens, we'll be a part of that as well and be able to get additional community care, really facilitators.
And how, I don't need the details, but right from the get-go, how is this going to be promoted to the community so people know such a resource exists? What are some of the things?
That's a good question. I think once we understand and have a system in place, then we will present to our families. We will have informational nights. We'll work with our nonprofit care coordinators to make sure that we can. And now it's not going to happen in September. This is the end game in 2 years. That we're going to build. Now, the nice thing about being a part of the grant is our families will benefit within those 2 years and really kind of help with systems of care. We have some amazing applicants for those 3 positions, some that have had to navigate systems of care when they grew up. And so it'll be, I'm really excited about kind of sharing with our board and our community how that progresses. And we have dedicated funding to be able to do that. So that's a good question.
Thanks.
Do you have like a goal amount of a surplus to roll into the next year?
That's a very good question. We have, but by policy, we typically shoot for 8%. This is obviously higher than that for an ending fund balance as we end next year. But as I started with my budget message, it's really important that we have a fund balance as we get to 3 years down the road to make sure that we're not falling off a cliff on funding. So sometimes that's tough for the public to see or handle, or our associations that we bargain with, to be quite honest with you. But it's very important that we got a gift from the legislature for ADM security to make sure that we keep our programs and people. And we have a commitment by the end of that 3.5 years now to make sure our FTE is where our ADM is. So our teaching staff and our expenditures are what we're going to get the following year as far as state funding with how many students we have in our schools. So on normal years, it's 8%. The next few years, it's nice that it's up in the mid to upper teens.
So Brent, what is this year's? What percentage is that this year? the end of the
This year, we're carrying over 23%, I think
Oh,
it
that's
said.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is a savings from kind of the pandemic for busing and things of that nature. And to tell you the truth, leveraging SIA, leveraging ESSER, leveraging high school success to really build that general fund up to be able to put ourselves in good position moving forward.
Because what you're saying is in 3 years, and if we're down 300 plus students, we really need to build back 300 students at $8,000 a head. I hate to put it that way, but what, 10 grand a head? Or
Yeah, it's
right?
about, well, you saw the number here. The ADM security is worth over $4 million in next year's budget. So if we didn't have that ADM to security, we would be cutting $4 million this year. That's the impact that it has on our school and our community. And when we were advocating, a lot of you guys did that as well. That would have re-traumatized us. Almeda Fire was traumatizing, and that cutting programs and staff would have re-traumatized our community. So
Also, when we are audited, which I also see that the cost of our audit goes up every year, but our auditors require a certain carry forward to give our school the rating, audit rating that we expect. And I remember years where we were significantly below that requested number from the auditors. So being able to almost double what we need, or triple it even, going forward really gives you a level of security with your audits on the state level as well. And because we do interest-based negotiations, our employees, they come to the table saying, what are you going to do with those dollars? It gives them some security as well going forward to know that we have that.
Now, since it's 23%, that's a big chunk. Who has the discretion to spend that if it needs to be utilized this budget year?
Go ahead, you can answer.
So that amount is not appropriated. So in an unforeseen event that we don't have enough money on the contingency for an emergency, then we'll have to do a supplemental budget to be able to appropriate some of those monies. Otherwise, they cannot be touched. They're just a reserve for the following year.
Okay, so there's not like a specific percent, like superintendent and vice superintendent could allocate 1% of that 23% toward emergency funding or anything?
No, unless it's through the budget process. That's why we have that contingency, just in case there is something that we need to have extra monies for. But otherwise, it's just a reserve for the following year.
If something were to come up and you need to use those funds, does the board make that decision, the school board and the administrators or superintendent? How does that work?
Yes, it will have to be also through the same kind of budget process. It will be a supplemental budget to be able to appropriate. Because without that, you're not allowed to spend monies. You don't have the legal authority to do it.
Every once in a while, we, and if you've been on the board for a while, we sometimes have to adopt a supplemental budget really for just $100,000 at the end of our fiscal year if we don't have the room in there. And so we do that through the board. I appreciate you talking and noticing about the auditors. We have amazing auditors. We actually did meet with them last week. And it is an increase for next year, but I will share that they really haven't increased that much over the last several years. And if you notice with ESSER funding and SIA and all sorts of federal funding, we were a little taken back, but then when Yasmin and I kind of looked at it, it's just like, well, they've taken pretty good care of us, and it's probably time to, with this $73 million budget, we use them all year long too. So when we call up, Yasmin's great about how do you suggest we do this? We had this, whatever funding come through. How do we need to do that? Do we need to do a resolution? Whatever it might be. So thanks for bringing that up. We had great auditors and it did increase, but I think it's worth it for that board.
I know these designations of different funds and things change every year. And I remember in the past when the auditors were the ones that helped us make sure that things were in the right place. So when it did go to the state and the federal levels for grants and things, we weren't in trouble. So the auditors are, it's expensive, but it's worth it.
Check. Civilians. Okay. I had some questions. You mentioned the increase in if budgetary purposes, bringing TLC under the school's umbrella. Do you have an estimate or an exact number? How much does that add to each school's budget? Is that a line item somewhere?
Yes, if you go to each one of the school tabs, for example, let's go to high school.
Yeah, I just saw the bottom line.
The TLC is under a specific function, which is 1-2-1. So you'll have to go, the high school is organized by areas or by classes. So it also includes special programs. So for them, it's 320. That will be the special education area. Yes, give me 1 second. That's right. Who found it? So
Tab 5,
page 28, page 29 has the learning centers structure and intensive. That's the TLC classrooms. So you will see that it has 2 teachers. So we have Megan and is it Kelly? Kelly, and also their instructional assistants as well. So the whole program moves according to the school. And this is, like I said, you know, is to comply with the requirements that they want us to organize expenditures according to the schools more than the district level.
Thank you. House Bill 5006, that 4.3 million, is that countywide? Is that specific to the Phoenix Talent School District?
So it is not specific to us. It was distributed among all the different school districts and cities, at least the first distribution. The second one was more specific to the districts that were more affected. But out of the 21 million that were appropriated for this purpose, and whatever came to Jackson County, we got the most monies, of course, because we had the whole city of Talent and Phoenix that were affected. So of course, the taxes will be affected as well for the district.
So the 4.3 million is for the entirety of Jackson County, or that's?
No, just for our school district.
It's
So
just for
the
us.
original intent of the House bill was for the counties to apply every year to have that tax loss, extra monies coming to them. But for some reason, they ended up changing the language. So instead of waiting for years to come to provide tax losses, they went ahead and funded everything in the whole year in 1 year. That's the reason why we had so much money. I mean, we just received it like maybe a week and a half ago before we finished the budget. So we had to redo everything.
So that's the 4.3 million will need to budget out possibly years and years and years. It's basically a contingency for property tax revenue.
Exactly. So since they didn't have a specific number of years that you could apply it, which is great, you know, you can hold to the money, and as we experience tax losses every year, we can supplement from that grant and just apply it to either the general fund or the debt service fund if that's where we need it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could jump to tab 20, what the debt service, 1.1 in interest, that sounds a little high. At what rate are you paying that principal down?
You know, that's part of the bond documents. So I will have to look it up for you. Each one of the different bonds and their maturity dates have different percentage rates. This happened in 2018, and the interest rates were really good, at least for this. So let me see if I can find it.
I know over the years also, we were able to refinance a number of those bond interest rates. So some of them started a lot higher than they ended up because the finance department was able to stay on top of that. And when a refi was offered, I think one of them we actually dropped 3% on in one renegotiation. So I'm sure that they can find it for you, but they all are different.
Just seemed when she said 2.2, like a debt service as a whole, 3.7, that's not that bad. But when she said it was 2.2 principal and 1.1 in interest, I was like, wow, that's a significant amount.
Yeah, and that happens a lot, even on mortgages, that at the beginning you're paying more interest than principal. And as you pay it down, then you pay more principal than interest. At least on the way that they, Piper Jaffray, program our bonds, we're still paying quite a bit of principal compared to interest because we have like two different kinds of bonds. Some are deferred interest where you don't pay them until like 2033. And the same thing for the people that bought those bonds. And the other ones are just like a regular mortgage where you pay your principal and interest every year.
So even though it's deferred though, is that compounding daily? Because
it is compounding.
that's high. That's why it's like that.
So we do have the whole program already, debt service all the way through the year 2040. So I could share this with you. Like I said, this is something that was negotiated back then. And there were the interest rates that we could get the best interest rate. So for this year, it's a 2.37% that we're paying on interest. And of course, each year varies according to the bond that was purchased for that year.
That's the deferred one?
The deferred ones are higher at a 4.26, but it's because everything is deferred to years down the road. And the reason why this happened is because the board wanted to keep the interest or the debt service every year to not go higher than 1.49 per 1,000. That's what was stipulated on the measure that went to the voters. And so we're trying to keep that rate not higher than that. So that means that people don't have to pay so much money to be able to, for us to make our payment.
What's the principal on the deferred one?
So the principal, they're all variable according to the year. Like I said, it's a whole schedule, so they all vary. They range from $2 million to $4 million, depending on the year.
Okay.
I mean, we could share this, it's public information. You could send it to Chris if you want. Sure.
This
Can I
would be a
send
good
you an
time to
email?
talk about the dollars we were able to leverage from the bond. Can you talk about that, Yasmin or Brent?
Can I interject real quick here? It's 8:20, and on my schedule, it says recess at 8. I want you to get all your questions out that you want, so I don't want to rush us. But also, if you need to take a break, we could probably take a 5-minute break, or do you feel like you have a lot more questions, or do you think we can power through this? I'm not trying to keep you from asking. These are great questions.
And we can print that document off and have that available during recess if that would help too.
But okay, let's take a recess. It's 8:23, and can you do 5 minutes? That's plenty. 8:30. Okay, 8:30. You get 7 minutes.
I was just going to invite Brent or Yasmin to, I think it's a good call out, to understand how expensive it is to fund a bond. But I think it's a good time to call out. We were able to leverage the bond for a lot of extra money for the public and to a huge benefit for our district. So could you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I can share. You may have noticed that in 2017, it was 70 million plus bond number revenue. And you're like, oh my gosh, I thought it was a $68 million bond that we voted on. There's premium that you get on the sale of the bonds. And we had almost $2.5 million on premium at that time when we sold our bonds. And so that boosted that up to over 70 million. And then with John McCaleb, our director of facilities, he leveraged incentive grants. We had a lot of incentives on this building as far as upgrading and putting in highly efficient systems that the state of Oregon gave us a tremendous amount of incentives for. We have received seismic grants from the state of Oregon, $2.5 million for the Phoenix High School gym seismic upgrade. We have applied for Talent Middle School and Talent Elementary seismic upgrades. Again, we should find out anytime. That's why we've been holding off on those projects to give it one last round of seismic grant to see if we get a chance for that, because then we'll be able to leverage funds and that will allow that dollar to go even further for our taxpayers. All in all, we have leveraged the bond project incentives, grants, taxpayers added up to about $84 million in projects. So that has been something to celebrate, I think, for our community. And it is definitely something to share as we continue to set ourselves up for years to come. So it's exciting. And I mean, if you just look outside there, and if you remember being in a budget committee meeting in our old high school, you couldn't even look outside. So, oh yeah. Yeah. And the, when you go out for a bond, you have some matching grants as well from the state. And we applied for that. And right off the top, we had a $4 million matching grant from the state on our $68 million bond. So that was another big one that we used mainly for Orchard Hills cafeteria. Yeah. But thanks for asking. That's something always nice to share.
I have a quick question, kind of follow up. Back when we were doing the bond, all this information was on the website. I'm not sure if it still is, but I know that I had all this memorized like 4 years ago. It has been off my brain, but I know that there was a spot at one time that had this all detailed out, and I'm not sure if it's still somewhere, but it might be good to.
Well, we'll make sure it is there and update, because as Yasmin said a week and a half ago, we just got a big chunk of like kind of bond support to make sure we leverage that fund so the taxpayers don't feel that hit. But we'll thanks for mentioning that. We'll get that updated and make sure we celebrate that as well, because it's a very, very big investment by our community. And we not only want to thank them, but make sure that they know and understand where those dollars are going. Thanks, Don.
Do we have a projected time? In the board meetings, we've talked about supporting community and understanding budgets. Do we have a projected time when that might get rolled out? I mean, it might be really beneficial to start to be proactive, especially as the years come up, right? And there's change in budgets, to start to get folks informed so they are able to be feel like they're part of the conversation and probably continue just to build that trust.
Yeah, that's a good question. As the year went on, I know the board had discussed that, and we essentially just put a really 30,000 foot PowerPoint on the budget document, but I think the desire was to have more of a Q&A for the public. And so we can certainly plan that as we look at some work sessions and some board dates as we go in the future. So I think it is important. I mean, the general public does not know necessarily what goes on in this meeting or anything like that, but I think feeding them a little bit throughout the year, I think will help. So thank you.
I used to get a lot of questions about our budget about the time property tax bills came out. So maybe anticipating that or immediately after that would, when people's attention might be more focused, give them some information so that, you know, they have intelligent questions to ask.
I think that's a great idea, and we'll have some good news to share with some, you know, leveraging funds and support to where their tax liability is not going to increase. So that's a good, really good suggestion.
Dawn. So if you go to the website, I found where you can see facilities and bond. It's one of the icons on the front. And I believe that's probably where you can find all the information. You're welcome. We also put a budget 101 explainer in the, if you go to departments, business and facilities, it's at the end on the left-hand side. It says PTS budget explainer. It's a budget 101.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you for really good questions. I appreciate that. And for the first year on the committee, you're doing great in asking questions. So I appreciate that. Okay, someone want to make a motion to accept the budget?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Phoenix Talent School District proposed budget for 2022-2023 and then in the aggregate amount of $73,570,000 total of all funds be recommended for approval, and that the permanent tax rate of $4.2422 for 1,000 of assessed value be assessed in support of the general fund. This permanent tax rate is expected to raise $9,800,000. I further move that a tax of $3,500,000 be recommended for approval for the debt service fund for the purpose of the regimen of bond debt owed by the school district. In detail, general fund, $42,670,000, special programs fund, $22,345,000, debt service fund, $3,725,000, capital projects fund, $4,830,000, for a total of $73,570,000.
Do we have a second to that motion? Okay, Roland seconds that motion. Any discussion? Let's vote. All those who are in agreement to that, please say yes. So if you want a hand raise, that'd be easier. Vocal?
Vocal for the recording.
Oh, vocal for the recording. Go ahead and say aye.
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 Any of those opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? Okay, it passes. So with that, we're going to adjourn, and I would like to call this meeting to an end. And again, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Yasmin for doing what probably most of us couldn't do, wouldn't want to do. And for the staff over here for another long night. And thank you for all your work. It's just, I was in a board or a budget meeting in 1998 or something. I don't remember the year. And it was the first bond that passed, and they had filing cabinets in the hall of the administration building. You walk through, you're going, this is a school district administration building. It's kind of embarrassing. Well, that you're before my time, but to see it come this far in the leadership and the team we have, thank you, school district. You do a great job. Appreciate it. Okay, we're done. Thank you for coming tonight.
Great job.